Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, Peter. Good afternoon to
Good
you.
afternoon, sir.
Yes, Peter. Good afternoon. Okay, let the other students join as well. And then we will start the class.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Peter.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, students, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
I hope that you all are safe and healthy.
Yes, sir.
So let's first of all
Yes, sir.
check with the previous details that we have studied.
Sir, we have read plant cell and animal cell.
Yes, you have read about plant and animal cell.
Yes, sir. So in the previous class.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. In the today's class, we are going to basically continue the further, and we are going to learn about the hypertonic solution. We are going to Prince Malik, do you want to get removed from the class? No, na? So you will not do any such things, okay, beta? Okay. On the previous turn, we also discussed about the plant cell, animal cell, and we discussed about the isotonic solution, hypertonic solution, isotonic. This was discussed, but a major part of it, the hypotonic plasmolysis. Have I told you this one? Hypertonic solution? Yes, beta. Hypertonic solution. ये बता दिया क्या?
No,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Sir, hypotonic, hypertonic and isotonic. Sir, ये सर थोड़ा सा इनका हो गया था.
Okay. So we will continue today with some of the terms. I will revise some of the terms. Okay, and after that we will move on to the cell wall. So first of all, in the hypotonic solution, we studied this particular term, which is called as turgid. It is important to note here that the turgid condition of the cell is because the cell is full of water, and especially we are talking about the plant cell. So the plant cell, which is full of water and it is about to burst. Note my words, I am saying about to burst, but it does not get burst. Okay, it becomes swollen because of the excessive water inside it, but it does not bursts. And that particular condition of the plant cell, it is termed as turgid condition. Okay, turgid. In the case of the isotonic solution, we also studied about this part in which the movement of the particles in and outside was the same. Okay, the movement was same. That means that the amount of water that was leaving the cell was equal to the amount of water that was entering the cell. It was equal. But in this particular term, when the cell cell will neither shrink neither it will get swollen. Okay, ये फूलेगा भी नहीं. It will not swell up, it will not shrink, so it remains the same size as it is, and that condition of the plant cell is termed as flaccid. Okay, that condition is termed as flaccid condition. In the last part of hypertonic solution, we studied that the solution that is outside the cell, it is having more sugar, or because we know that the word hyper, it means excess, right? And excess concentration. So excess concentration of what? Excess concentration of any solute that we are using. And we have taken example of sugar. So excessive concentration of sugar leads to such conditions in which basically the plasmolysis happens. And what is plasmolysis? Plasmolysis is the removal of water. water gets removed or water gets outside the cell, and this process is termed as exoosmosis. Okay, exoosmosis. Any problem up till here? Yes,
No, sir.
having any problem up till here? Okay, then let's move on to the next part. And in this particular part, beta, we need to understand this thing that the plasmolysis, the process of plasmolysis is, as we studied, when the plant loses water, plant cell will lose the water through the osmosis, obviously. So there is a shrinkage. That means reduction in size of the contents of the cell away from the cell wall. So that simply means that the cell, contents of the cell, the cell wall, which is a rigid structure, the cell wall, which is a rigid structure, it
Sir,
remains
can you
as it is.
excuse me, sir?
Yes, Peter Prince.
Sir, no, I'm not Prince. I'm
Okay, Rishabh Kumar from 9th B. Yes, Peter.
sir, sir, please you can talk me about which page are you going on?
Which page we are going on? But as such, we are not studying. We are not studying as per the main NCERT. NCERT में ये सब रखा है. It is given in the NCERT, but
Yes, sir.
not given in so much detail. NCERT is just using the terms. NCERT केवल term use करती है. But we need to.
सर, आप अपनी तरफ से पढ़ा रहे हैं
हाँ जी बेटा.
अपनी तरफ से पढ़ा रहे हैं
नहीं बेटा अपनी तरफ से नहीं पढ़ा रहा हूँ. Actually it is in your syllabus, but that is not mentioned in the NCERT. NCERT में जो language लिखी हुई है ना, the language that is used in the NCERT, that is
sir.
high standard. So that's why I'm explaining the process behind it. Okay, so that would.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so it is actually given after the plasma membrane. There is a heading cell membrane. After that, it is given in point wise. Okay. Okay. Now, in the hypertonic solution, we observe that there is a cell wall, which is the rigid structure, right? It is a rigid structure, and we said that the contents of the cell, they will get shrinked away from the cell wall. ये cell contents जो हैं cell के वो cell wall से दूर चले जाएंगे. So that process we are calling that as the exoosmosis. Okay, it happens only in the case of plant cell. Plasmolysis happens only in the case of plant cells. In the case of the animal cells, nothing happens, just the cell becomes shrink or reduced in size. Okay, the cell shrinks and that's all that happens. There is no plasmolysis in case of plant cells. Okay, beta? Okay, now let's move on to the next part, that is the cell wall. Now, cell wall is a very important structure because we need to compare it with the cell membrane as well. The cell membrane was selectively permeable, right? But this particular membrane, which is called as cell wall, it is actually freely permeable. It is actually freely permeable. And because it is freely permeable, means it can allow any substance to get across it. So for example, this is the plant cell and this is the nucleus, and there is a plasma membrane here. This is the plasma membrane. So we are having a cell wall and we are having a plasma membrane. So the cell wall is freely permeable. Freely permeable means it will allow any substance to leave the cell. It will allow any substance to enter inside the cell. Okay, so it is freely permeable. It is not able to select which substances should enter inside and which substances should leave the cell. Since it is not able to decide this much, that is why we say that it is freely permeable and it is and it is non-living in nature. Okay, the plant cell is having cell wall which is non-living in nature. The plasma membrane, if you remember, the plasma membrane was living in structure. Okay, it was living structure, but this is non-living. So there is one difference, it is non-living. The second difference is that The plant cell. The plant cell is freely permeable. The plant cell, oh sorry, the cell wall. Cell wall is the freely permeable membrane, and whereas whereas this particular excuse me yes, we were talking about that cell wall is freely permeable, but the plasma membrane is not freely permeable. Okay. After that, this particular cell wall can be found in bacteria and in certain fungi, and obviously in case of the plants as well. Okay. But here is the difference. The cell wall that is present in the bacteria, that is present in the plants, and that is present in the fungus, all are different type. सब अलग अलग तरीके की होती है. कैसे अलग अलग तरीके की होती है? Let's understand. In the case of the plants, it is made up of cellulose. In the case of the plants, it is made up of cellulose. But in the case of the fungus, it is made up of chitin. There is another chemical which is known as chitin. Okay. In the case of bacteria, it is made up of some other mucopolysaccharides. That's the complex material, mucopolysaccharide. We do not need to know the composition. We just need to know that what all organisms are having the cell wall. Okay. So it is found in the bacteria, plants, and the fungus. Okay. Now, what is the function of the cell wall? We have already studied that. It provides rigidity. Rigidity means toughness. So any change in the shape or size of the plant cell, it can resist that because it is rigid structure. Okay. Then the other function that we know obviously is that it prevents the cell from bursting. We have filled excessive water inside it, it will prevent the cell from bursting. Okay. And
Sir, please thoroughly explain rigidity.
rigidity. Okay. Rigidity is basically bitter toughness. Okay. For example, if we talk about iron is a very rigid structure. If we want to change the shape of the iron rod, then we cannot just change the shape of the iron rod with one single hand. We need complex machines in order to change the shape of the iron, or we need to make it hot, red hot, right?
Yes, sir.
It will change its shape. This is what we are saying, that similarly the plant cell is having the cell, or the fungus or the bacteria, they are having the cell wall, and this cell wall is actually rigid in structure. That means it does not allow the cell to change its shape, and that is why
Okay, sir.
we are saying that it is a rigid structure. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now, the next cell organelle or cell content that we have to study is the nucleus. It's a very important organ over here, and students pay attention to this particular point, because if you are not able to understand nucleus, then you will miss the chromosome, then you will miss the chromosome in the DNA, and obviously the cytoplasm. Okay, so try to catch up, and if you have any problem in between, you can ask me. Okay. So let's start with the nucleus. So nucleus, first of all, it was discovered by Robert Brown. As we already studied this, nucleus was discovered by Robert Brown. Now, Robert Brown, who discovered the nucleus, actually was not able to give very much details about the nucleus, but he gave enough details. बहुत सारी details उन्होंने बता दी थी. But what was the basic criteria? What was the basic criteria and what's the basic function of the nucleus? So nucleus is possessed only by the eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells. The prokaryotic cells, they are not having any kind of nucleus. They basically have the genetic material which is disturbed or dispersed inside the cell. कैसे होता है? We will see about that also. But for now, yes, Peter Seema Agarwal. Any question? Okay, then Ansh Kataria, 9C, mute your mic. Yes, Beta Aditya.
Sir, please,
Huh.
please explain eukaryotic cells. I forgot.
Eukaryotic cells are those cells which are having the nucleus, proper nucleus. U means true and karyo means nucleus, right? So true nucleus, cells with true nucleus, those are called as eukaryotic cells. Okay. So nucleus is
Okay, sir.
possessed by the eukaryotic cells. Now, what is the nucleus? Nucleus is basically a double layered membranous structure. That means if this is the nucleus, there is not only one single membrane. ये केवल एक ही membrane नहीं है. इसके अंदर एक और membrane होगी, and this is why we are saying that it is having a double membrane. So obviously this will be an outer layer and there will be a inner layer. In the diagram, you cannot see the outer and the inner, but there are. Okay. Now the nucleus contains chromosomes. What are chromosomes? We will study about that. Don't worry. Yes, beta. Himakshi Pal.
Sir, can you explain the cell wall and cytoplasm again? Because my class was deep because of poor internet connection.
Okay, beta. For that you can contact me separately. Okay, I will explain you that. Don't worry. But you need to contact me separately for this. Okay. Now, first of all, we are talking about the chromosomes. We will study about the chromosomes, so don't worry. Let's see the anatomy. Anatomy means structure, internal structure of the cell. Okay, so internal structure of the nucleus. Sorry. So nucleus, the membrane of the nucleus, these membranes, the outer and the inner membranes, they will have pores in it. Pores means holes. इसके अंदर छेद होंगे छोटे छोटे. Okay, and because it is possessing some of the holes in it, that's why we say that it is having some pores. Those pores are called nuclear pores. Okay, and the envelope or the membrane or the covering is known as the nuclear envelope. Okay, thus the fluid like substance which is present inside the nucleus, that is called the nucleoplasm, and the solid mass like structure that is present inside the nucleus, that is called as nucleolus. That is termed as nucleolus. Okay, beta. Now we just came to know that the nucleus is having chromosomes, right? So what are these chromosomes? Chromosomes are structures like this. Okay, इस तरीके के structures होते हैं. And what are these structures? Let's understand this. So chromosomes basically they contain information for inheritance in the form of DNA. We all know DNA, right? DNA के बारे में हमें थोड़ा बहुत पता है. Now, DNA is actually related to the inheritance. Inheritance means information that is passed from one generation or from the parents to their young ones. माँ बाप से बेटा बच्चों में जो information जाती है, right? That information is contained inside the chromosome. Information, कौन सी information? For example, how does a particular cell knows? एक सेल को कैसे पता particularly that where it should form the eyeballs, where it should form the nose, है ना? nose हमारी कहाँ पे होनी चाहिए, हमारी eyeballs कहाँ पे होने चाहिए, हमारे hands कहाँ पे होने चाहिए. All this kind of information, हमारी life से related information, all this, it is contained inside the DNA. Okay, it is contained inside the DNA, and DNA is basically making up the chromosome. So the chromosome, it is made up of DNA plus protein. Okay, chromosome is generally made up of DNA and protein. And if we take any functional segment of the DNA, that will be called as gene. मतलब कि कहने का मतलब ये है बेटा that DNA is very very long. DNA is very long, and एक human cell में it is about 2.2 meters. In one cell it is about 2.2 meters, but human cell, it is very tiny. We cannot see it without the microscope, right? So how it is arranged inside the cell, that's the question, right? So of this long DNA, हम कह रहे हैं कि बहुत लंबा सा DNA होता है, उसमें से सारा का सारा DNA काम का नहीं है. Not all the DNA is functional or is important. Only the important or the functional part which codes for something which is meaningful, that is called as gene. Okay, and the whole complete, this is termed as the DNA. Okay, this complete is called the DNA, and part of it which will code for something, that will be called as gene. Okay,
Sir, what's the full form of DNA?
what's the full form of DNA? Okay, you must have studied this in the ninth class or in the 8th class also. Deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, acid, AC, acid. DNA. Okay, deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. Now, the chromosomes they combine, they basically condense, मतलब कि अपना structure को और ज़्यादा complex कर लेते हैं, and they form the chromatin material, and the chromatin material they form a thread-like structure. इस सब का मतलब क्या है? Let's understand this. So first of all, we are going to talk about the human. ये एक human ले लिया. Human के हमने कुछ cells लिए, okay, and we have taken only one single cell. अब एक सेल लिया हमने, बहुत सारे cells नहीं, only one single cell. Out of that one single cell, we are having 23 pairs. You must have heard it, or you must have studied in the 8th class also. We are having 23 pairs of chromosomes, right? 23 pairs, or we can say 46 chromosomes. Out of those, we have taken only one. Okay, we have taken one. So this is the one chromosome that is represented in a diagrammatic or in a cartoon form. Okay, now this one chromosome, अगर हम इस एक chromosome को खोलना शुरू करें, what we will get out of it? It is basically having DNA. So this means DNA, we have taken the DNA and we have coiled it. क्यों coiling करी? Because it is very lengthy, approximately 2.2 meters. 2.2 meters का DNA है, right? So we have to coil it. So we are coiling it and we are super coiling it. Similarly, जैसे एक हमने thread ले लिया, वो बहुत लंबा thread हो सकता है, but we can just coil it around and make it a ball-like structure. जैसे ऊन का गुल्ला होता है ना, तो like that. So we can make a ball-like structure of it by coiling it, right? Similarly, we have coiled the DNA. Okay, we have wrapped the DNA around the proteins. हमने क्या करा, प्रोटीन लिए, जैसे पत्थर के ऊपर एक तागा बांध देते हैं, ऐसे हमने प्रोटीन लिया, उसके ऊपर हमने डीएनए बांध दिया. ठीक है, सो एज यू कैन सी इन दिस हियर, दिस इज द प्रोटीन. सो प्रोटीन के ऊपर हमने डीएनए का थ्रेड, दिस पर्टिकुलर स्मॉल थ्रेड, दिस इज द डीएनए. सो इफ वी ओपन अप द क्रोमोसोम, what we will get out of it? Protein and DNA. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Sir, please repeat it again.
Okay, I'm just saying that if we open up the chromosome, we will get DNA and protein out of it. Okay, तो हमने क्या करा है, प्रोटीन, कुछ प्रोटीन्स लिए, and we have coiled the DNA over it. हमने उसके ऊपर DNA को wrap up कर दिया. Okay, coiling कर दी उसको. And if we make enough of the wrappings, हमने बहुत ज्यादा DNA, बहुत ज्यादा लेंथ का DNA एक बारी में coil up कर दिया, finally we will get the chromosome. Okay,
That means DNA is made up of protein and chromosomes.
no, not the DNA. Chromosome is made up of DNA and protein.
Okay, sir.
Okay, the DNA is made up of something else. You will be studying that in your 11th class if you take the biology. Okay, so now the question is about the DNA, that what is DNA? So a segment of DNA, this is the segment of DNA, and if it is coding for something, किसी चीज के लिए अगर कोड कर रहा है, then that particular DNA segment, उस वो particular portion DNA का, that will be called as gene. लेकिन वो कोड किसके लिए करेगा? Ultimately it will code for better a protein. This is why we have written a protein. Okay, कैसे होता है, डोंट वरी अबाउट इट, जस्ट अ आउटलाइन, इतना हमें आउटलाइनिंग पता होनी चाहिए. ओके, नाउ आफ्टर दिस, the based on the nuclear region, there are two types of cells, prokaryotic or eukaryotic, and the photosynthetic prokaryotic bacteria have membranous vesicles which contain the chlorophylls. Basically this is an extra point, you don't need to pay attention to it. Okay, and the function of the chromosome is it acts as the brain of the cell. इसका मीनिंग क्या है? Without the nucleus, the cell cannot perform anything. Okay, various activities of the cell, that for example the cell has to perform digestion, cell has to perform excretion. So who is giving signal to the cell? Basically nucleus is giving the signal to the cell. Okay, and how the nucleus is giving signal to the cell? Let's understand that. The DNA basically it will form RNA. There are two types of nucleic acid. I think you must have studied about it. Deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid. Okay, there are two types of nucleic acid. Nucleic acid means ऐसे acidic substances जो nucleus के अंदर मिलते हैं. Okay, so there are two nucleic acids. One is called the ribonucleic acid, meaning RNA, and the other one is deoxyribonucleic acid. This forms our DNA. Okay, so DNA से क्या बनाता है हमारा न्यूक्लियस? RNA बनाता है, और RNA से बनाता है बेटा प्रोटीन. Okay, and this protein जो बनता है ये प्रोटीन, this protein is very important. Why? Because this protein will carry out many reactions. ये ही वो चीज है जो सेल के अंदर रिएक्शंस कराता है. Whether cell is doing excretion, whether cell is doing reproduction, whether cell is performing nutrition, whether cell is doing anything at all, it is because of this protein only. But this protein, ये protein को ultimately कौन बना रहा है? DNA. And DNA is present inside the nucleus. So that is why, who is the controlling center of the cell? Nucleus. Okay.
Nucleus.
So this is how we say that nucleus is acting as the brain of the cell. Okay. Now, this is the chromosome. ये हमने यहाँ पे chromosome पढ़ा था. This one. So this is the particular chromosome that we are studying right now. Structure of the chromosome. So a chromosome looks like this. Okay, इस तरीके का दिखाई देता है बेटा when we study the chromosome. Okay. Now after this we have the cytoplasm. In the case of the cytoplasm, what is cytoplasm? We have studied the cytoplasm under the three categories. जो हमने तीन components पढ़े थे ना, structural organization of the cell in this particular slide. Here, the structural organization of the cell. There were three parts of it. Plasma membrane, we have studied that. Nucleus, we have studied that. And now we are going to study about the cytoplasm. So जितने भी cell organelles, all the type of cell organelles, whether it is let's say mitochondria, ribosome, chloroplast, endoplasmic reticulum, all these are contained inside the cytoplasm. So we are studying the cytoplasm now. Okay, so let's study cytoplasm. Okay, first of all, cytoplasm is the fluid content of the cell. Fluid content means which can flow, okay, inside the plasma membrane. It is enclosed by the plasma membrane. If this is the nucleus, this is the plasma membrane, this is the nucleus, then this particular part, the left out portion, the dotted portion which I am drawing, this is basically the cytoplasm. Okay. Now it contains many specialized cell organelles. Specialized cell organelles means which can perform the specific function. So particular specific function ही perform करेंगे. Okay. And the cytoplasm contains inorganic and organic materials. ये inorganic और organic का meaning क्या होता है? Basically, they are related to the carbon. If a there is a compound, कोई compound है बेटा, उसके अंदर कार्बन है और हाइड्रोजन है. ओके, कार्बन एंड हाइड्रोजन, देन वी कॉल दैट particular particle or compound as organic. And let's say if it is not carbon and not hydrogen, it can be anything like sodium, like NaCl. NaCl is salt, so it is basically inorganic because it is not containing carbon and hydrogen. That's why it is called as inorganic. And anything that is containing the carbon and hydrogen, that is called as organic. Okay, beta. Now, so it can contain various inorganic and organic materials. Main area for biological reactions. This is important point. So जितनी भी biological reactions होती हैं, biological reactions means reactions inside the cell. तो cell के अंदर जितनी भी reactions होती हैं, it is basically taking place where? Inside the cytoplasm. Okay. Any doubt up till here?
No, sir.
Sir.
No, sir.
Okay, then. So this is it for today. We will study the functions from next third, and I already sent some of the notes, but that notes needed some of the correction. So I will send them again after some of the corrections by today only. आज ही भेज दूंगा बेटा. Okay. And जो previously मैंने notes भेजे थे बेटा, don't copy that. Okay. There will be some correction in it, and after that you can copy it. Okay. And if you have any further question, बेटा you can text me on WhatsApp also, and you can ask now.
बट सर आपने अभी तक नोट ही नहीं भेजे.
बेटा भेजे थे actually में, but I deleted them. Actually deleted them because they needed some of the corrections. Okay.
Okay, sir.
ओके सर.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, beta.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, beta. Pragya.
Good afternoon.
I'm not teaching from any book. It is actually the slide or presentation that is made by me. Okay. I'm not teaching from any book, beta. Okay. That's it for today. Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, beta.